Good morning and welcome to an experiment going live on YouTube for the first time, and I'm excited about it. As you can see from the chat message box, I'm glad you're here, and please feel free to post any comments, any thoughts, any criticisms. Everything is welcome. I want to begin with gratitude. I try to begin everything with gratitude, starting with the day, but all of my encounters with people, with business clients whom I'm coaching, with my wife and my children and grandchildren, I'm striving to be present and to be grateful that I can be present. So the gratitude that I have today as I begin this is twofold. First of all, I'm grateful for me. I'm grateful for the gift of my life, and I'm grateful to present myself and in some ways to receive myself, such that this may be entirely a monologue without chat. I'm fine with that. So when I bring myself, I'm grateful for my fear that I will fall on my face and do something wrong, because the fear drives me in a way to be more clear, more effective, to have planned what I would do on this session a little bit. I'm grateful for my courage to do something like this, to go ahead and speak in public, to record myself, to share ideas in a platform that I don't really even understand, and which feels a lot like talking to myself. I'm grateful for myself in two more ways. First, for my arrogance, for my confidence. Somewhere on that spectrum, I lie. I would like to think I've gone from the arrogance of my youth to a little bit of confidence. And the other thing that I'm grateful for in coming to present some ideas and being grateful for my confidence is that I'm grateful for my humility. I come here to speak and to share some ideas, though it is not my preferred format anymore. I love to talk. I enjoy it. Most people find it anxiety producing. I don't, for whatever reason. But I've come to love listening and engaging much more than talking. And so I've picked a platform which is not the greatest for that. It's kind of a one-way forum. So I'm humble enough, despite that, to know that you have ideas and to know that if you had time, I could hear you out, and that would be a rich, rich gift for me. So those are all the ways I'm grateful for myself. And I will hasten to add that I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful that if you're showing up here even for a little minute just to test this out while you're bouncing and surfing from one wave to another, that for at least a little bit, you'll open your eyes if you're on YouTube, as we originally always thought of it as a visual platform, and that you'll open your ears to the thoughts that come in. And of course, those are just the physical parts, the entryways in. I'm grateful that you might open your mind to a new idea or two, or a renewal of an idea, a renewal of an idea that you've had maybe once or 10 times, or maybe a million times. And I'm grateful that you would open your heart, that in the work I do in my podcast, Diacardia, it's all about speaking through the heart, speaking from your heart and through your heart, and listening with your ears, of course, but listening through your heart, not just through your mind, but with the heart that which desires, the heart which desires to really hear another person, with the eyes that want to really see the tree that's there, not a dictionary definition of a tree that you've seen a million times, but to see through your heart and to see that tree as though you've never seen that tree before, and to be gratified to be grateful that when you take in the world and you take in people, not just through your ears and eyes, but through your heart, that something really powerful happens. So I appreciate you being here. If you are here, I would be delighted if you would chat. Hey, I am here. This is me. As I said, it doesn't matter if I'm speaking to a live audience, but at some deep level, the connective tissue between myself and a real human being makes this less idle talk and somehow just a little bit more real, a little bit more embodied here. So before I get into the ideas that I wanted to share, I just want to frame that I imagine I'll speak for about 15 minutes, maybe, if you want to jump out at that point. Maybe if I'm engaged with the ideas with my heart and my mind and excited about the possibility that somebody is listening along with me. Nice to see you, Cece Grantinez. Then I may go much longer, 20 minutes, a half hour or longer. I don't have anything planned for this day, which I grew up understanding as the Sabbath. That could be a whole talk, but a day more of rest and a day of connection and a day of savoring. So that's my thought, is that I might be here for 15, 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes. And any chatting you would like to do, great. So let me introduce the theme for the day by giving you a little bit of work to do. So you could do this math in your head, but only if you are one of those people who just has phenomenal intellectual chops, mental math chops. So what I would invite you to do if you're watching on a computer is pull up Gemini. It accompanies YouTube, and give it the math problem that I'm going to give you, or pull up an Excel spreadsheet, or if you want to prove what a math genius you are, pull out a sheet of paper, but get ready to carry a whole lot of numbers from the ones place to the tens place and onward to the left. Okay, here's the math problem that I want to give you. What I want you to write, I'd like everyone to write 365, the number, not the words, 365. And now we're going to begin a chain of other numbers to be added to it, to be multiplied. So 365 is, of course, the number of days in a year. So how many of those have you had? Or in other words, how old are you? So 365, in my case, times 68. How many years for you? So 365 times your years times 24. So now we're going to find out how many hours you've been alive. You know that you're 28 years old or 37, or like me, 68, or maybe if you're lucky, 82 or 85. You know that many. Okay, but now you add in 300, you multiply, times, we've already done this. We've multiplied by 365. Now we're multiplying by 24 hours in the day. Now multiply by 60. I'll go over these, so I'm not explaining them all. You know that 60 is how many minutes. So now the sum of that equation would be how many minutes you've been alive. And now I want you to add in one more number, and that's 16. And then I'll read them back so that you could write them simply, right? So 24 times, let me do them in order. 365 times your number of years times 24 times 60 times 16, and sum it up. What do you have? Feel free to put your number in if you're chatting with me. I come up with, I will only give you the first three numbers, 575 million breaths. I have taken 575 million breaths. About a month ago, I did a Facebook Live, the first time I'd ever done that, just on a whim, because I'd had this realization. Oh my God. I have been alive for over 500 million breaths. It just, forgive the pun, blew me away. Like a massive wind, air, breath. 575 million breaths. And then this past Monday, when I was doing my breath work, where I work at breathing, which is an idiotic sort of idea that I will come back to, it hit me. Okay, Dano, that's right. You've had 575 million breaths. But that's a breath. But like a breath is a unit of two. In breath and out breath. So I've actually had 575 million in breaths and 575 million out breaths. Wow. I want to invite you to reflect on that a little bit. But for the nerds out there, let me tell you that I got nerdy and I got curious. Like, does everybody breathe the same average of 16 breaths a minute? Does everyone breathe that way? Do I always breathe that way? Of course, if I'm running, I'm going to breathe at a faster rate than that. But here's the thing. If you ask Chat or Claude or Gemini, they will slot it out if you want to be accurate, because from 0 to 1 year old, you breathed at about 25 breaths a minute. You were learning how, and your lungs were not that big. So it took a lot more breaths. And only at about 40 years old, at about 40, the average number of breaths dropped down to about 14 a minute. You got good at breathing, basically, right? You figured out how to breathe. Okay, I labeled this in the social media, which Zuckerberg and his algorithms seem to keep from getting to many people's eyes, because it was on YouTube and they want you to stay on Facebook. So it basically buried my post saying I would be live. But what I was advertising to people is that this would be a time to reflect, that you would have a chance to reflect. Like looking in a mirror, you would look at yourself. And if you had one available, or if you turned on your camera for a selfie, what you're looking at is a person who's breathed hundreds of millions of times. Hundreds of millions of times you've breathed. 200 millions of times you've breathed in and out. And some equal number of times you've been at the seam between the in-breath and out-breath. Maybe try one for somatic experience. Breathe in, hold, stretching the seam wide, and now out breath. So I've had 575 million in-breaths. There's been a tiny seam where I seem to stop breathing, and then 575 million out-breaths, and then another seam from the out-breath to the in-breath. So I'm going to ask you a series of questions, but first I want to invite you to do what I just invited myself to do silently in a nanosecond, which is to breathe more consciously. In, out. In, hold. out. Hold. In. Hold. Out. The people who study and practice breath as I do would label some of what you just did. For instance, we were doing a box breath at the end. In, hold, out, hold, in. Maybe just notice yourself. Maybe notice whether your neck and your head just move a little better if you've been breathing with me. Your head that takes the in-breath and prepares to fight, to argue, to push, to move, to pick up the kids, to make breakfast, to plan for the day, and the out-breath that rests and relaxes. If you were reflecting and looking at yourself in the mirror, you'd see maybe the two-stroke engine. In, out. Maybe you add in the pauses. Much of the breath work leans heavily on the out-breath, as you can imagine. And if you've been doing this with me, you might not only have a little intellectual awareness. I never thought of my breath as being two parts quite like that. Maybe I didn't know the neurology and the physiology of in, to get tight, to fight, to move, to get things done, to accomplish stuff. And the out breath as a rest and relax motion that helps me to be aware of the sun on my back and my shoulders. The out breath is kind of like a Sabbath breath. God created the world in 6 days according to Genesis mythology, with no offense to people who believe it literally. And then he rested for a day. My God would rest, and in that day he would think, I need a partner. He would think, this is a little bit paternalistic of me to think that I created the world all on my own, where everything I've created, the animals and even the seeds and the plants, have male and female about them. Maybe one day in God's self-reflection on himself, he realized, now I'm going to go out on a crazy limb and I don't mind. Maybe he realized, or maybe she realized all along, that we who thought we heard the voice of God, we men who wrote the scriptures down, we men, W-E-E, we men, tiny men, projected a God who was a he. But maybe they were right in Genesis when they said male and female, he created them. But they were kind of wrong too. That some individuals were male and female, he created them. And where heterosexual people with their normative conventions get mad at trans people for using the plural them, maybe we should have a little bit of humility and see that people who are trans or may say of themselves they're gender fluid, that they knew something better than we did, that there was a crossing, a transition from a paternalistic view to include the maternal and the feminine, which, by the way, is equal to or greater than the male, I think, in relationship. That most biological females are a little bit better than most biological males at transiting, at pulling the family together, at taking care of the children, including the so-called difficult ones that can't seem to be disciplined into being good kids. And they took care of the older folks. They preserved the wisdom, and they kept the wisdom of the old people in the story. Well, I didn't think I would go here. But I've went about 45 years ago to the idea popularized by Carl Jung that we were androgynous in a way, that what we presented to the world due to social norms and cultures and to some aspects of biology, in my case, was a male side I projected, but that beneath that, maybe beneath, standing under, understanding, the heart understood the mind better than the mind understood the heart, because the mind thinks it's on top. Under the male self is a female self. Under the female mind, culturally determined and dictated, is a male heart. We've seen these emerge as the social gender roles have been diminished. Women supposedly trained to be soft and gentle and passive and receptive became firewomen, firefighters, police women, became governors. Soon, I hope, will become president. But we all have that feminine relational self. So I'll stop here with this tangent from the heart about and for and through the trans people whom I've had the incredible pleasure of learning about and getting to know, and being humbled by them rather than telling them, here's how you need to live. So if I haven't turned you off with my politically woke and awakening and nonsense, if that's what it is to you, then I just want to ask you a few questions, normal questions for a Sabbath, for a time to reflect. First, can you imagine your first breath? Can you imagine your first breath? I have to close my eyes. Oh. I was there for my 3 children's first breaths. And it was unimaginable even when I was there. Almost too much to take in. Wow. After these 9 months of imagining, look. I guess that's as close as I can get to imagining my first breath. What happens for you? Maybe take this next breath as the first breath of the rest of your life. I'm going to. Oh, God, that was good. Oh, wow. I'll take another. Oh. That's my first question. Maybe jot it down for when you're not in the car or watching this distracting old man talk. What was my first breath like? Can I imagine it? And here's my second question for you. Go back to your math problem and your math answer, where I had 575 million breaths. Breath, so close to breast as a sound. Breaths. How many of those do you think you were aware of? Like in the way that we think of consciousness and being conscious of something and paying attention to it, from the Latin teneo, to I hold, tenere, to hold. How many of those did you hold in your mind, like as they were happening? I don't know. When I started meditating, which was about 30 years ago, I think the answer would have been 10, maybe 10 breaths. The answer now would be a lot more than that, up in the hundreds or thousands. It's hard to actually be and simply be, because this keeps going and going and going. So that's the second question. How many were you aware of? And the third question I wrote down, and I'm not sure why I wrote it down, but I wonder if you've had some border exceptions where, one would be people who've had near-death experiences where they actually in their body, I think, thought they had stopped breathing. I'm not an expert on those accounts. But let's take a more banal example. 7th grade, I'm at John Hill Junior High School, and I'm running sprints. They called them suicides, which I thought of this morning, which is fascinating, where you would run short distance and back, mid-court and back, 3/4 of the court and back, all the way across the court and back. And in time, it would get so hard, you would breathe so fast that you couldn't seem to keep up with your breath. You might get nauseous, as I almost felt the beginning of the urge. You might have thrown up on the sideline if you were one of those athletes who was physiologically inclined. I won't guess at the psychological inclinations. Or maybe you were underwater, or maybe somebody held you underwater for a few seconds that induced a panic in you. Trauma warning if this is activating for you. Then certainly breathe and know that was an exception, that time when you had a chest cold and gagged so hard you weren't sure you could breathe, or that time you ran so many sprints that you were puking because maybe it was stopping you so you could breathe, or maybe something happened and you held your breath for a long time and couldn't breathe. When I was a little boy, 4 or 5, after my infant brother had stopped breathing, sudden infant death syndrome, I would hold my breath till I was blue in the face. Was I trying to join him? Was I just so mad at the world? I don't know. That was a long time ago. Well, the third question was the exceptions, the times when you were aware of your breath not because you were in meditation and you had slowed your mind to such a degree that you were paying attention to the feeling of the air tickling your nostrils, or paying attention to nothing but the out-breath. But that there were times when you were afraid you couldn't breathe. I think it's the experience some people have with a heart attack or a stroke. And what I want to invite you to do is do another math problem with me. However many of those times there were when you held your breath because you were going to get paddled by your parent, or you were going to run into the car in front of you, or you felt like you were going to die by coach-driven suicide on a basketball court. Take that number and subtract it from the actual estimation of how many breaths you've had in life. Subtract those exceptional breaths out, those borderline breaths, those I can't breathe, or even those I don't know if I want to breathe anymore moments like I had when I held my breath as a toddler. And look at the, what's it called? It's not a sum. What's it called? A minus B equals C. The answer is an extraordinary number of breaths that you didn't have to be conscious of, that you didn't have to try, that happened while you were sleeping. There's another math problem, right? 8 hours a day, sleeping times 365 days in a year, times the number of years you've been alive. Your body has chosen life for you over and over again. Your body has chosen to take in oxygen produced by the trees and the plants outside. It's taken that gift and said thank you. And it's given back a lot of carbon dioxide back to the world. And you had to do nothing for that. I don't know what you think is a miracle. I don't know what you think is a miracle. I guess somebody coming back from the dead would certainly be a miracle. The pillar or the cross or the ground on which believing Christians stand, that somebody came back from the dead. That would be a miracle. But we get to come back to life with every breath. For old farts over 40, 14 times a minute. 14 times a minute. Life comes back to you. So you are embodied, I am embodied creation. We are connected to the trees by breath. We give them life and they give us life. The oceans that produce tons and tons of oxygen are connected to us, and we're connected to them. It's no wonder that if you ever find that moment where you float in the water without any fear, without any destination, that you feel the oneness with Mother Ocean, as some might say, or lying on your back in the sun as a child, an adolescent at the beach, an adult, a parent taking their children and getting a break that you could doze on the beach with the sun coming right through your eyelids. And you breathed, you were alive. So I thank you for however much of this you have listened to with your physical ears, watched maybe with your visual eyes, but especially opened your mind to or reopened your mind to what it cannot possibly grasp, that you have had hundreds of millions of breaths and you did not pay for them, and you don't owe anyone anything for them, and you did not do anything for them. They were just given to you. And so maybe sing a song today where your out breath carries not only the air, but is shaped by your lungs and your larynx. Or maybe just tell somebody with your breath, with the out breath, God, I love you. I think I'll tell Jennifer, God, I'm so grateful that you've had 1 year less, but still a billion in breaths and out breaths. God, I'm grateful for you. That, by the way, is what Diacardia is about, is that breath, what we're doing now is respiration. We are spirating. Spirare means to breathe. And the root, maybe you hear it already, maybe you knew it already, and I'm reminding you that spirare, to breathe, to respirate, and to aspire to greatness, to aspire in some people's worlds to heaven, to aspire to love, the upward spiration of plants and people. That's the same root as spirit. In Christian traditions, it's referred to as the Holy Spirit. And holy means like other, like transcending, the transcending spirit. But it is it is connecting. It's the connecting spirit in the Christian Trinity. It's the spirit that connected Father to Son. They forgot the fourth leg. They forgot the feminine so completely. Though many would say spirit is a feminine word in its etymological roots. So we get a little bit of the feminine. But breathing is a religious act, I guess is what I'm saying, not in a church or in a religion, or maybe in the church of nature, open a door or a window so you can be a little bit more aware of that tree outside that is breathing for you, and make it be aware that you are breathing for it. And no, this isn't Disney. This is your body. This is your mind able to grasp this. This is your lungs actually getting oxygen from the trees and the plants and the ocean. And this is your vehicle to sing or to breathe out your love and gratitude for life. My great friend, Nicola Zacharina, who helps me with social media, would be mad if I didn't mention Diacardia. a word I invented and a podcast I'm creating with others, which means from the Greek dia, or between or through, between you and me, through what? The cardia, like cardiac arrest. Give your cardia a rest. Be arrested. Rest on a Sunday, even if just for a minute or 5 or 10, and breathe. So Diacardia is about those close people in your life that you could call partners. I don't have a word for them. You could call them colleagues. They're in the same league as you are. They're co-leaguing with you. Call them your son or your mother or your non-binary child. Call them your business partner. Diacardia is about speaking not through this, not without this, using this, but through this, the heart. Thank you for watching. Leave me a comment. Email me if there's something you could share that would be helpful and useful for me personally, and perhaps useful for others who might have listened to this video or that I should connect with going forward. This is a beautiful prayer posture. My dad prayed with his hands like this in church. My mom and a lot of the women like this. I never knew what that meant. But in many Eastern traditions, it's the same. Silent bow.